elevated souls to this video. Welcome back to another conversation with the people that are creating this BYAES collective for you. Today, I obviously had the honor to have this conversation with one of our one and only astrologer, Ray, and our spiritual guide. And welcome, Ray. How are you?
Oh, thanks so much. I'm fine. I'm fine. I hunkered down with the corona thing, but it's an opportunity to do more growing. You just have to be more focused.
Yes. Well, that's one of the things that I would love to speak about it during this conversation, is taking this moment to just be inside and look inside of us and grow and elevate. But like, let's not just give away the best of this conversation straight away. What I would like, well, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time, for being here for our followers, and just trying to bring, we always try to bring in to help the people that are looking to watching or following us, to just help them to become more, as we said, more authentic, finding themselves, their essence, and then have a much better life. Yourself, how did you get into astrology first and foremost?
Well, the simple story behind that is after spending about 10 years in the military, I met a man who seemed to know more about me than he ought to. And I asked him how, and he said astrology. And I said, oh, you got to be crazy. I'm not going to, deal with being directed by balls of gas and rocks in the sky. He said, well, okay, fine. And then after a while, it became pretty clear that I needed to do something. So I asked him what books to get. And so from that point on, he became my mentor, who translated everything that I was learning into how to communicate that to people on a simple, practical, everyday level, rather than being so esoteric and concerned about all kinds of invisible spiritual things, right? So that's how I got in, and eventually got to meet and work with Dane Rudyard, which is really an exciting thing. And that led me into doing a lot of media work, which led me to you.
I always believe that everything happens for a reason. You came into my life in the right moment, and that birth chart reading was just when you open the window in the morning and then the sunshine comes in and the birds sing, it was like a life-changing thing. And that's why we want to bring this to many other people, because I want as many people as possible to feel that, to find themselves and just live, not surviving.
Exactly. That's why I do the work that I do, because we're caught up in a cultural reality that is based upon ideas and concepts that are literally 500 to 2,000 years old, and their time is over, and we need to emerge from it, because it's in decline. It's going to really crash. But instead of trying to prop it up and make it better, I think what we need to do is get out of the way and do the work of building the seed foundations for a new culture that is more involved in organic humanity, rather than some sort of workaday world where you work for some authority figure and do what you're told and shut up. I want to get people out of that.
So just to get, and then we here trying to do this with BYAES Collective and reuniting strength and passions. But what I love about what you said before, when you were introduced first to astrology, you yourself thought you didn't believe in that, you didn't listen to it. So what I want to bring is, like, to people that tell me, like, they laugh at me when I say something related to astrology. How did you personally go from be that person, and what made you change and get into it?
Well, what made me change was that even though I said, well, how do I learn this? And I got to meet Rudyard and all these other people, my mission for the first 10 years was to prove it was wrong, that it was bunk and it wasn't right. And every turn, I found out that it was accurate and it was meaningful. So then I began to realize that I needed to include the planets in my sense of the reality that I'm living in. Before that, it was excluded completely, and there was nothing but my relationship to society without having any concept of being related to the earth. Certainly, I knew, you know, you plant seeds, you grow food, and so forth and so on, but the real connection to the earth wasn't there anymore. So over time, it became more valuable to me because I was able to understand what was going on by referring to the cycles of the planets. And so I understood my life better. And then that made me realize that whatever I was here to do was probably going to be helped in some way by studying and practicing astrology. So it was a long turnaround. The first 5-6 years was determined that I was going to beat it. And then I began to realize that that whole idea was embedded in my chart. And I was just doing what the solar system, which created me, had in store for me to do. And I was just really, I couldn't avoid it anymore. You look in the mirror, you have to see your face. If you see somebody else's face, you're still caught up in the culture.
But what I find difficult myself, and obviously you the expert in this, you know, there are different people. There are the people that are so much into astrology and spirituality. There are the people that are like, they've got curiosity, but they're like, I don't know, but they're open to listen. And there are the people that's like, oh, that's BS. So when somebody comes to you and say, how can astrology help me? Or how can a birth chart help me? What is your explanation coming from you as an expert?
Well, the reason astrology can help you is because it is a symbolic representation of who you are, why you're here, and what kinds of challenges you're going to have to overcome. And without astrology, all these things happen. You happen to things happen to you. And without an understanding of what is going on, you're likely to make all kinds of mistakes, which at the time don't feel like mistakes, but over time you can realize you took the wrong path. So astrology can help you understand who you are, what your life purpose is, and how to handle challenges that really ask you to be your elevated, authentic self. But you don't know that if you don't have any reference. So it's a good frame of reference to understand that the solar system is not out there. The solar system is something that you are a product of, you're in it. And so you have to understand essentially that it works because we are not disconnected from our environment, and our environment includes the entire cosmos. And I see the cosmos as a living organic being, and the solar system as a cell within that being. And since the earth is got the moon going around it, creates kind of a shell, so that the earth is the womb, the yolk of how the solar system manifests life. You're an example of the solar system becoming Verena. I am solar system becoming Ray. But what we all are is created out of the same solar system. The sun in the sky that's there now was there when you were born, when I was born, when people were born 10,000, 20,000, 2.5, 3 billion years ago. 5 billion years, the sun was there. So it's creating all of this. And it's very essential for people to understand that astrology also is not for everybody. There are some people, their astrological chart will tell you that they have to go without that particular reference. They have to use other references. There are scientific minds that operate on a materialist level, where every action has a reaction. And from the scientific point of view, everything is rather seen in a material way, whereas astrology combines the material reality that you're involved with, and that reality that surrounds you after you're born is a stimulus for you to be able to respond with becoming your authentic, elevated self.
Very interesting on the part that astrology is not for everybody, because so you saying that there are some people that just don't waste even time on explaining to them because it's not their moment in this life to know. Is that what you meant?
What I mean is that it's important for you or anyone who is involved with astrology not to be overbearing with the use of astrology as a way of communicating with people whose structure is more engaged in materialism, the material world, rather than the sense of a spiritual connection to everything. You know, all of the indigenous people of the world had, in one way or another, different connections to the environment, but they all saw the environment as an extension of who they are. They didn't see the environment as separate from them. So over time, because of the rulership of Saturn being the planet that was the furthest out planet we could see for thousands of years, created a whole authority pattern that people had to follow. Then in the middle of the 17th century, 18th century, Uranus is discovered. And Uranus contains the orbit of Saturn, so it overthrows the old patterns of thinking and understanding. So the scientific world is operating in a Saturnian kind of a way where it's limited to, can this be repeated? There is no way that there can be a repetition of Verena. There is no way that we can make another me. Astrology doesn't work that way. So if a person is scientifically oriented, that's their dharma. You know, dharma is, what is your duty? What are you here to do? So if you're here to be a scientist, then you need to be a scientist. Now, there are people who have sort of combined both, but the one that comes to mind is Carl Jung, the psychologist, who in his last 10 years or so of practicing psychology would not see a client unless they knew the time of birth, because that's important to be able to construct the astrology of the person's birth. So because he saw that there's what he calls strange occurrences in a person's life that you could see in the chart. So he was fascinated by it, and he found out that it helped his scientific perspective understand the person's personality better by seeing what the astrological chart pointed out. So you can do both, but very often, you know, you can't.
One question just to cut in the middle now, just for people that are watching this and know a little bit more about science, and what is your star sign or sun sign, your rising sign, and your moon sign, which is the first three that people go for when they know a little bit more than it's not just the horoscope on the magazine.
Well,
if you want to say that.
You want my
Yeah.
Oh, well, the sun when I was born was in Sagittarius, and the rising was Aries, and the moon was Leo.
You're pure fire.
Yeah, I get kind of hot.
Do you think that if people were able to read a little bit more birth chart, we would make interaction between others better?
Well, if you understand yourself, which is what astrology can assist you in doing, understanding yourself is to realize ultimately that you are in the process of becoming yourself over the whole period of time of your life. You can accomplish a lot, but the reality is that when you know how to use the energy that you have, you can be more stable, you can be more positive and more creative, therefore more awake, more alive. And in that state, be able to relate to people from a more conscious level. Because a lot of the time, people go into relationships, even get married because, well, it's the thing to do, according to the culture. When in fact, it may very well be not the thing to do when you're looking at the person's astrological configurations. You know, people ask me, for instance, what what sign am I compatible with? And I say, well, any sign that is conscious enough to be able to be aware of who you are and not, have any trouble communicating with you about who they are. So if there's consciousness on both sides, then you simply decide what kind of relationship should we have. It may not be the standard everyday relationship. People live together without getting married. People get married without living together, if you understand what I mean. They have certain culturally imposed roles. Women get oppressed because they have been somewhat conditioned to accepting roles for them to play, which puts them in a subservient kind of situation, which if you look at their chart, it says if you're in that kind of situation, it's supposed to be a stimulus for you to be able to liberate yourself from that. If you didn't have the chart, you would just know that she was suffering and have to figure out how to reduce it without having any map, any astrology is kind of like a prescription that the deities or God or the cosmos is writing out for you. There's an old Zen saying that may not be old, may not be Zen. I might have made it up myself, but it says, "Can you read the chicken tracks in the sky?" And so those are the stars, so to speak.
Yeah.
And for thousands of years, we've been reading them and drawing pictures around, about these constellations and so forth, and having this fantasy that those constellations are really what astrology is about. Astrology is about the relationship between the earth and the sun, between our creator, the sun, and our mother, the earth. And so that's what we have to understand. What is that relationship? And that relationship exists within us. My sun is in Sagittarius, so I have got a consciousness that's constantly trying to see what it's all about and what it means and how it works, and uplifting, positive. And the Aries part of my path makes me rather impulsive, but I'm here supposedly as a pioneer because Aries is the beginning of a new cycle. And the moon is asking me in Leo to be authentic, to really have a clarity about who I am and what it is that I have to say to people, because it's in the part of my chart that relates to the idea of expressing myself in a very authentic, valid kind of a way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, very, very in depth, very awesome. But what I like as well is like there is this preconception nowadays of astrology. So I bet that you had this asked so many times. It's about, so what about a horoscope? Like one thing that I watched in one of the interviews as well that you said is that the horoscope that you read, the daily one in the magazines, has got an entertaining type of scope.
Yeah.
While astrology that you do and you just spoke about up until now, you talked to us about it, it's a completely different approach to what it does to ourselves.
Yeah, what you're reading in the daily newspapers, these astrological stuff that you read there, those signs of the zodiac and all that, that's what you call event-oriented astrology. It's talking about things that are going to happen. And so, you become focused in a way, if you believe those things, on expecting a certain kind of thing to happen. And the danger is that you get mentally, spiritually prepared for something. And when it happens, you don't know what to do because it doesn't look like what the chart or what the astrology report said. So the idea of astrology that I use is that you are what happens to events. And that makes it different because then you can direct and control yourself toward what event you need to have happen in order for you to grow. So in some ways, people create a spiritual crisis as a means of awakening themselves to the fact that they need to emerge from the culture, not consistently try to be the best of the worst in the culture, or to be the epitome of what the culture is saying you should be, when in fact the culture is really holding you down. It's attempting to continue the forms and structures of how they perceive reality by confining you to that. So what I'm talking about is a kind of a transpersonal kind of astrology where you look at everything in your life, including and most importantly the past, because you have to accept the past. And in so doing, you know, a lot of people, myself included, probably yourself, look at the past and see the ton of mistakes that they made, the things they should have done, didn't do, the things they did badly, and so forth, and always feel like held back because of that. So when you accept that that happened and understand that the purpose of it happening was to get you to where you are now with a higher level and a more clear understanding of what your consciousness is and how to use it. So the past is important. It's important to accept. So don't get hung up there.
Do you, well, that's amazing, because that's what, like, me personally went through. And obviously again, through the reading that you gave me, was like the moment of like boom and move forward. Like, everybody, as you said, always go through like, oh, I wish I could go back and do things different. I wish, like, right now I see myself, and I would love to transmit to other people that I would go back and do exactly the same mistake, because if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have felt in a certain way that brought me to feel how I am now and who I am now. So it's just like a journey of acceptance and moving forward and realizing who you are and be authentic. And going on to this conversation of Be Authentic that you were telling me about, and I love that the name that I came up with Be Your Authentic Elevated Self. It's like so many people live, as you were mentioning, in a situation now that allow the culture they were born in, or the society they're born in, or the family they're born in, to create like this, as I see it, like if a coconut, you got the outside and create this outside, this beautiful dressing up. It's like dressing up into something that you don't feel yourself inside.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's through, like, when you use astrology first and foremost, because it goes above the normal person understanding for who doesn't know astrology, is to actually take off that dress and just be authentic and be who you are, be who you're supposed to be in this life. I don't know if people believe in different lives or not, but like, and go through a process of acceptance of who you are, and knowing that you're meant to be like that.
Having the courage to remove the mask that the culture offers you in the form of education, in the form of gender identity, in the form of what kind of careers are available to you, in the form of economic deprivation, in the form of all kinds of cultural conditionings. Yeah, you are born into the past because it was all there before you were born. So there you are amidst the past, asking, or being asked by the past to continue it. And people can do that, but they do reach a point where they have to make some kind of change and transformation. And on an individual basis, you know, that can take years, and it can operate in subtle ways or in major ways at given events that a person brings themselves to in one way or another. But that's like an individual path. But what happens when you have an entire culture that is failing? It's failing everyone in it. So you look at the people in that culture, and you notice, oh, well, there's a, for instance, now Uranus, which represents change and transformation and being a part of something more than just your own physical body and your own